And the confident man leads with curiosity. He does not lead with defensiveness because he's not afraid of the reaction he gets. He knows he can't control the reaction he gets, but he knows he'll be okay regardless. Put the ego aside. Whatever happens, you will be okay. Trust that. And trust that when you open dialogue and you make dialogue available in your relationship for communication and getting to the root of the problem, that's when you both feel heard and understood. That's when you turn toward each other. Welcome to What I Love About Sex, where some incredible guests and I, Steph Kanowski, will be bringing you the tools for improving your sex life with topics such as sex issues with your partner, sexual self-confidence, premature ejaculation, sexual shame, masturbation, sharing your fetishes, orgasmic pleasure, and more. Sex is still so taboo, and I personally believe that by improving our understanding and communication skills around sex, we can enhance our own self-pleasure as well as deepening our long-term romantic relationships. So listen in, try to stay open-minded, and let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on the What I Love About Sex podcast. So today I want to talk about a sex communication skill because there is so much to sex. Sex is so cool and fascinating and goes so deep. No pun intended. And it is because there's just so much that goes into it mentally, right? And emotionally, and it has to do with context, and it has to do with we tie these expectations, right? Which we shouldn't, but we do. And like there's so much that then past trauma adds into it, and then fantasy, and there's all this stuff going on. And then communication on top of it is what allows us to express ourselves and to understand the partners that we are sexually interactive with. So there's just so much to it. And that's why I believe I am a lover of communication and studying communication. You guys probably know that by now. So to understand different communication skills and bring it into your sex life just makes it so much easier to navigate. So the skill set that I want to talk about today is going from the place of having these automatic defensive reactions to women when it comes to sex conversations or situations, and for you to go from that automatic defense to the automatic curiosity. Defensive reaction to curious reaction. Think about the difference there. It is a huge difference. I was talking to my client today about this because we just had our last session. He was a one-on-one client. We worked together for 3 months, and oh my God, I'm going to miss him so much. Awesome client, saw so much progress in such a short amount of time. He went from not dating at all and pretty much like avoiding his dating life to and being a people pleaser. He would go on dating apps and it would be like this feeling of, oh, I hope I'm good enough for them. And now he's in this place of talking to multiple women at a time. He's been going on dates every week, probably like once a week for the last 3 months. Maybe that's a long shot, but maybe every other week on a date with a woman and talking to new women. And along with that, now has the mentality when he goes on a dating app of, I'm going to see who's worthy for me. You know, so it used to be, am I good enough? Now it's like, okay, is she good enough to fit into my life? And not in a like, is she good enough for me type place where I'm like so great, you know, type thing. But it's just like, is she the right match for me? And if she's not, it's okay. I have time, and there are plenty of women out there. So he's at this peaceful place where he's very confident in himself. He sets boundaries. He used to be really afraid of like when he would start dating someone, if it wasn't right, how to end it without being an asshole. And he's practiced that throughout the last 3 months because there were a couple women really into him that he just wasn't into, and he had to close it off. And he's built these communication skills that has made his dating life and his intimate relationships so much easier. And it allowed him to be so much more confident because with these skills, he doesn't fear the future of his dating life or his intimacy. There's no fear because he knows he can handle it through these skill sets. And that's what we should be focusing on most when it comes to our sex life is maybe not most, but communication is everything. Communication is so important. And when you get really clear on like what skills you need to improve in order to be a better lover or be a better, to love yourself more, like whatever the goal is, like it always goes back to communication and a certain skill set. So the skill that we took him, the major skills that he learned, and one of them was asking really good questions and becoming this curious man versus this man that would get defensive right away. So he would be on a date, and because he had low self-worth in himself, and what that means is like I said, he would have thoughts like, oh, I hope they're good enough for me. I hope they don't leave me. I hope I don't have to turn this thing off because I wouldn't know how and I'd feel really bad. I don't want to creep out women I go on dates with because I'd probably come across creepy, right? Like he had all these thoughts that they didn't make sense with who he really was. Like he's nowhere near a creepy guy. Super cool guy, like super laid back, relaxed, has really cool hobbies, great at his job, really interesting, like knows so much about so many different things, is funny, is humorous. He has all these great things going for him, but he was focusing on these potential threats that simply weren't true or happened in his past a couple times. And then he made it seem like, oh, this would always happen. So how do I handle this when it does? So he was kind of anticipating the worst. And that's why he was in this natural defensive reaction to women. Okay. And you guys can take this information, whether you're in a relationship or whether you're single, because it doesn't matter. It's in you regardless of what relationships you have or in. So he would have a woman, he would be on a date and a woman would say something. All right. This is when we first started working together. And he would take what she said and pretty much assume the worst out of it, right? Like assume that it meant something that made him feel unworthy. And this goes back to our beliefs, guys, because whatever we believe about ourselves, we will look in our external reality to try to prove right. We will always try to prove right our strongest beliefs and find evidence to back it up so that the brain can say, see, I told you, let's play it safe. Let's not do that anymore. Let's avoid that. So what he was doing was assuming when women would say something that wasn't flat out positive or flat out good, like it wasn't obviously like anything that was a little questionable, he would immediately look at it and react defensively just to protect himself from having to go further into something that may be painful for him. And that's where that defensive reaction comes from. It's a safety mechanism. It's you trying to protect yourself, but understand how often you do it. Or how often you do it when you don't necessarily have to do it. Because what I was able to point out to him was when he started going on these dates and had these situations of, well, Steph, she said this to me. And I just like, that really threw me off. And it just makes me not feel good about this relationship. And I would say, whoa. Okay, let's look at it. Let's look at it from a different perspective, because can you see how maybe she could have meant it this way? Or did you ask her if this is why she said that? Or did you, ask her this? Did you repeat what she said and then ask her a question based around it? And he would say, well, no, I didn't really think about that. I just assumed she meant this. And I'm like, I don't see that. Like, based on your history together so far, I don't see it meaning that. You might be right, but I don't see that. I think you're just proving yourself right so you can get out of this relationship and not get hurt. And he said, I think you're right. So there were a couple instances like that where he was like, wow, like I didn't think of it like that. I didn't see that side, and I wish I did. And I said, well, hey, you can see it next time, and you can see it by asking a question versus assuming and reacting defensively. So he really took that to heart, and he did such a good job moving forward with this, because moving forward, instead of having a reaction like assuming she meant something, right? Instead of reacting to her like, oh, well, you're avoiding me, so this just isn't going to work. Instead, he would take that situation where he felt like she was avoiding him and say, hey, is there any way you're avoiding going out with me? Because it seems, I'm getting mixed signals. I'm a little confused, but I want to make sure, you're comfortable and that I just want to see what's up. Like, could that be true? And he's getting reactions from women that are more like, oh, no, that's totally not true. Here's what happened, blah, 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 blah. And then he gets clarity. So see how he went out of his way to be curious instead of assuming. He was curious about why she did something. He didn't assume it meant something bad for him where he had to get out. So his curiosity is making him much better asking questions that then opens dialogue to understanding each other and to seeing a new perspective. And to tell his brain, hey, just because something weird happened doesn't necessarily mean she's trying to get rid of me. And even if she is, I'll still be okay. And he's really done a really great job of doing that. And you guys can do that too. It's mastering the skill of asking questions, asking good questions so you can get good answers and you can open up conversation. One of his first dates he had with this woman was her walking out. It was a really interesting situation, which I'm not going to share the whole thing, but she ended up walking out on him. And she said a certain something. First, she said something. She asked him a very bold question on a first date. And he reacted truthfully versus just like going with it, because he was kind of in shock. So he just went with it and was genuine. And then she got upset over the genuine reaction. So she leaves. And he could have just not reached out to her again, right? But he really liked her. And he knew that she really liked him. And it was just a weird situation. So he brought it up to me. We talked about it. And he went back to her and initiated conversation around asking her a question about it. He didn't blame her. He didn't assume that she meant anything horrible by it. He asked her a question around it. And she responded. And he said, I think we should talk about this. Let's get on the phone or something. And they talked through it. And I said, look at that. Like, look at how powerful that was when both of you could have just avoided this situation and you both decided to be vulnerable, have a conversation around it, and ask questions. And that's what saved that moment. Like, your confidence in choosing curiosity over defensiveness saved that moment. Saved the relationship because he's still dating her. And they have a great relationship so far. Like, it's just starting, but it seems very promising. And he really enjoys being with her. So I said, like, that could have been the end of something that someone who you're really enjoying spending time with. And he was like, I know. Like, I'm so glad I did that. So I want you to ask yourself, like, are there situations, or think about the past week or so, maybe the past month. And whether you're in the dating phase, you're trying to talk to women, you're not even dating yet, but you're trying to talk to women, maybe you're married, have a fiance, whatever your situation is right now, I want you to ask yourself ask yourself the last time you reacted defensively when you didn't necessarily have to. When you could have asked a question instead. And maybe there's an ongoing situation in your relationship that comes up from time to time, and you normally shut it down. You try to find a way to avoid it. But ask yourself right now, how can you lead with curiosity instead of shutting that down or avoiding it? Because whatever we resist persists. So this thing will keep coming up over and over in your relationship until you get clarity around it and you both understand it and you do something with it. When you ask questions, that's when you get to the bottom of things. That's when you come up with solutions because you understand each other's perspective. If someone does not feel heard, they will keep bringing up the same problem over and over and over. That is a sign they do not feel heard. So they're trying to get to the bottom of it. And if you shut it down each time, they can't get to the bottom of it, you can't get to the bottom of it, and it will never be solved because it's avoided and shut down. So I think that's a great exercise. Pay attention to what you've been shutting down, what makes you shut down, what makes you react defensively, and ask yourself, how can I react with curiosity instead? If you're anticipating a certain conversation that makes you nervous with your partner, ask yourself right now, prep yourself, give yourself like 2 good questions that you can ask that person so that you feel prepared to tackle it with curiosity versus defensiveness. And the confident man leads with curiosity. He does not lead with defensiveness because he's not afraid of the reaction he gets. He knows he can't control the reaction he gets. He knows that. And he knows that no matter how bad it may be or however painful it may be, he can't control it, but he knows he'll be okay regardless. And that's the confident place you want to be in. Put the ego aside. Whatever happens, you will be okay. Trust that. And trust that when you open dialogue and you make dialogue available in your relationship for communication and getting to the root of the problem, that's when you solve things. That's when you crack the code. That's when you both feel heard and understood. That's when you both feel more bonded and intimate to one another. That's when you turn toward each other, as John Gottman would say. Famous marriage researcher and therapist. Okay, so keep that in mind. And that is it for this topic. Hope you guys enjoyed that and got a lot out of that. Don't forget to leave this podcast a rating and review, whether you're on Spotify, whether you're on iTunes. I would so much appreciate it. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening, and have an amazing morning, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. Talk to you soon. I hope this episode helped you. If it did, I would love for you to leave me an iTunes review. It would mean the world to me. You can also screenshot your favorite episodes and tag me on Instagram at Steph Ganowski. And before I go, remember, your sex life is as good as you make it out to be. Until next time.